hope to find you all in good health and spirit. Thank you for joining us today for AIM Summit webinar series sponsored by Crypto Vault. We're all very excited here today to have Tim Draper live. The topic for the day is mass cryptocurrency adoption on the horizon. Is this the tipping point? Before I introduce you to our wonderful host and moderator, I would like to encourage everyone to put in their questions for Tim in the Q&A chat box on your Zoom, as the second half of this webinar will be dedicated to your questions. I'd like to now introduce you to Zachary Cefaratti, founder and CEO of Dalma Capital. Zachary?
Thank you, Raha. It's such a pleasure to be hosting my good friend Tim Draper here. Tim is a top global venture capitalist, the founder of Draper Associates and DFJ. The firm's investments include Coinbase, Robinhood, Twitch TV, Skype, Tesla, Baidu, Focus Media, YeePay, Hotmail, SolarCity, Athena Health, SpaceX, Cruise Automation, Planet, PTC Ledger, and so many others. He's been a leading spokesman for Bitcoin, blockchain, and ICOs, and cryptocurrencies, and has led investments in companies that would list two of the largest ICOs ever, Tezos and Bancor. In promoting entrepreneurship, he created Draper University of Heroes, a residential school based in San Mateo, California, to help extraordinary people accomplish their life missions. The school launched entrepreneurs from 76 countries who built 350 companies, including Envision, sold for $275 million, crypto leaders in Qtum, Space Cash, Data Wallet, and Credo. Tim received a Bachelor of Science from Stanford University in Electrical Engineering and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Tim, it's so great to have you. Thank you so much, especially at this time when we've been seeing Bitcoin rallying ahead of both block halving and in light of the COVID situation. Please share with us what is happening in crypto and where do you see this progressing in the near future?
Hey, terrific, Zach. Great to be here, and Raha, thanks so much, and happy Ramadan to everyone. And if you have to run out because the sun goes down to eat or drink, it won't bother me. If the sun goes down, I don't know exactly when the sun's going down for you, but in any case, yeah, cryptocurrency. It is one of the most interesting things that's happened to the world today. The COVID has accelerated the future in some ways. Some ways it's been absolutely tragic. A lot of people have died. The isolation has hurt a lot of people. I know in the US we have about 25% of the workforce unemployed. On the other hand, people have accelerated to the future. They've moved toward remote medicine. They've moved toward using Zoom. They've moved toward VR. They're trying VR, and they've moved toward Bitcoin. And what's happened, I think, is when people are sort of stuck in place, they think, oh, well, maybe it's time for me to try these new things that all these early adopters have been talking about for a long time. And so all these new technologies, new projects, new products have started across the chasm. And Bitcoin is definitely one of those. The Bitcoin companies I know are exploding. The Bitcoin wallets are multiplying. Many Bitcoin wallets out there. I just bought some more Bitcoin. The rest of the cryptocurrency world is also starting to take life. At least the ones that need to survive, the ones that look like they have incredible promise. And so that means that there is a shift that has happened toward the future, that probably during a bull market, everybody kind of sits there and goes, oh, everything's fine, I don't have to do anything new. But during a market where all of a sudden there's a shock to the system, they look for the new products. So the consumer finds the new products, and they cross the chasm. The products cross the chasm, and then all those unemployed people are now starting to try to figure out what to do, and great entrepreneurs help create new jobs for people. And as a venture capitalist, I am in the catbird seat, the ability to fund these new entrepreneurs with all of those unemployed people looking for jobs, looking for something new to do, and those entrepreneurs taking on new technologies and moving them forward. And these existing technologies that look like they're going to transform the world are just starting to flourish. So let me go through those. Bitcoin, the blockchain, smart contracts are one set of technologies that are going to transform a lot of interesting industries. Banking is definitely going to change. Insurance will change if you combine those technologies with artificial intelligence and big data and surveillance. You're going to start seeing insurance companies that are completely transformed. I'll get into that in a bit. You're going to, these technologies, when combined, are also going to transform healthcare, and they're going to transform government. So let's start with finance. Well, Bitcoin, as most of you probably know, is open, transparent, global, frictionless, and it's distributed. So when you have an occurrence like the US printing $2 trillion, you know that the dollar will decrease in value relative to whatever asset. Bitcoin will rise against that dollar because there are only 21 million Bitcoin, and that's all there are. So so people will start seeing what we've been seeing and talking about for years, is they're going to say, well, wait a second, why do I want to hold on to a currency that's tied to a government that is subject to political whims or dictatorships in some cases that will just print more money? And you know, I know Nigeria and Argentina have not trusted their currency for years. It's like their currency is like a hot potato. And so now people are saying, we need this global and open, transparent currency. And so there is this flight, the beginnings of a flight to Bitcoin. The halvening, which Zach alluded to, has had some impact in the past on Bitcoin prices, but it usually takes about 6 months. And here's why. You have the halvening, and then it takes a while. The miners are saying, well, wait a second, I'm only getting half as many as I did before for the same amount of compute power and effort and whatever. Well, then people realize that they actually are running low on Bitcoin and they need more Bitcoin. And so they have to buy Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin continues up. And it continues up to where it becomes economic for the miners to keep mining. And then more awareness, more people get involved, and you'll see another big spike in the price. And maybe not a spike, it may just go up and plateau up there. So Bitcoin's going to really go through a major transformation, which does not bode well for banks. Banks, you know, have always been that trusted third party, and now we're kind of fed up with banks because they've been taking 2.5% to 4% every time we swipe a credit card. They take money on every single transaction, and we are paying into those big buildings and those well-dressed bankers. And I think that time is coming to an end because we have a new currency, and I can put all my you know, I can put all my currency on a ledger, you know, something looks like that. Well, not quite like that. And then I kind of go, oh, well, this is my currency, and I can sweep it to pay for coffee or whatever at Starbucks, or I can buy a house with it, or I can do whatever I need to, and I don't have to put my money at risk in a bank and have them manipulate my money, and I hope I can get my money out when the time comes. I think we have a new and better and a better system. In addition to that, we're getting a better system for accounting. That will be coming because the blockchain keeps perfect records. So it's just a matter of time before the software is built around the blockchain so that every Bitcoin can be accounted for and everyone knows where it goes. So that's the transparency of Bitcoin. That is going to be incredibly powerful. That's going to be very important, and it's going to save a lot of friction, a lot of accounting fees and auditing fees and transfer agent fees and whatever, because the blockchain keeps a perfect record. And then there are smart contracts, and smart contracts are making our lives much easier because we can build a contract in software that is permanent, that operates exactly the way the contract was written, and there's no wiggle room, and so less use for you don't need the lawyers for the monotonous tasks. You can use them for more advice, and the accountants can be more advisors and less bookkeepers. I believe there will be a time when I can raise my next fund in Bitcoin and put that money to work in entrepreneurs in Bitcoin, and the entrepreneurs can pay their employees and suppliers in Bitcoin, and the entire waterfall will be taken care of by a smart contract where all the Bitcoin drops in to your wallet if you're an LP, for instance. That's incredibly valuable. Think of the guys who create Star Wars. There are 15,000 people that contribute to Star Wars, and every one of them has to get a check every quarter for their contribution based on the outcome of the Star Wars. Well, if right now that's done with a check that's handwritten, that goes on or hand stamped, that goes on in an envelope that goes into the mail that eventually gets to the people who helped out. Well, with Bitcoin, that money can just drop into people's wallets every time somebody goes to the movies or downloads the movie or whatever. This is going to make a lot of industries much more efficient, much more effective, and now people are starting to download their wallets, start this new economy, and that new economy is going to change a lot of things. Now let me go into insurance. Insurance companies run on you pay your premiums every month, pay, and then you issue a claim. And currently what the insurance companies do is they say, no, we're not paying anything. And then there's a fight, and then there's a legal battle, and then you eventually get some of the money that you'd hoped you'd get. Well, now you can set up an insurance company with just a smart contract, an actuary, and some surveillance equipment, because then you can have people pay and pay and pay and pay, and when they issue a claim, they say, my house burned down. That can be verified by a satellite that goes overhead and checks and says, yes, indeed, that whole block burned down. Or the wind came blowing through at a hurricane speeds, and yes, your car could have just turned over. There is going to be artificial intelligence data that will determine whether people get paid and who is trying to be fraudulent. And I believe that that insurance company is going to be much more profitable and create much happier customers than any insurance company in the past. Well, what is government? Government is a series of insurance companies, or most of it. It's healthcare insurance. It's workman's comp insurance. It's unemployment insurance, which is really happening a lot right now. It's Social Security. It's welfare. It's all these insurance packages. So a lot of government can now be done on the blockchain with smart contracts, with surveillance equipment, and using Bitcoin. And we will have a very efficient world. And that world, it will be global and open and transparent. That will be an incredibly prosperous world. Well, what's happening now? Why does it not feel like that is happening now? Well, the businesses all feel very global, but the governments still, many of the governments still feel tribal. The tribalism has always been a big deal. It's like, here's our border and this is your border, and don't cross that border or you're messing with all of us. Well, now, as business people, we know that the world economy is much more important than any of that tribalism is. And all of us become much wealthier in a global economy. So the world is definitely moving from tribal to global, but a lot of governments are saying, wait, no, I like it the way it is. They don't want it to change. And so they create a trade war, or they put up a barrier or whatever. Or they scare their population into thinking that there's a villain somewhere. It turns out that it's not really true. There aren't really villains. I have traveled to, 80 countries around the world, done business in about 60 of them. I believe that all people all over the world are great and all different and all fun and interesting. And we can learn and we can grow from connecting with all of them. And our economies will be much, much better the more interconnected we are. So that argues for a Bitcoin economy. It argues for using the blockchain, using smart contracts, and operating more of your life virtually, more of your business life virtually. And that's starting to happen. And that's a movement that we're all getting involved in right now. Now, I'll add one more thing. I'm seeing a lot of interesting things happening in healthcare. I mentioned healthcare insurance and how that could be changed by Bitcoin, blockchain, smart contracts, and artificial intelligence. Well, healthcare is all going to be data-driven. Right now, we have a company in our portfolio that does a better job of determining the diagnostics of a patient than an average doctor. And when combined with a doctor, it does even better. And so data is going to be a much bigger part of diagnostics, because there is so much more data than any patient can give to any doctor in a given period of time. For instance, it's not just all your medical records that could be up in the cloud. It's your genetic history and your blood test results, and then things that aren't even medical related, seemingly. It's the airplane seat you sat in, the conference you attended, your Fitbit results, what food you had for breakfast. All these things are now data that can be added to create a much better diagnostic tool. And then on the other side, the digital world is also changing therapeutics. And with COVID, both of these things are happening much faster than they ever did before. You put up a disease over here, and then you run drugs against it through computational biochemistry, and then you find one that's a match, and you can determine on the computer if this drug has efficacy and safety, and it will not be long before the computers will outperform the FDA on efficacy and safety. So this is the beginning of a major transformation in the earth, where the internet transformed communications, information, gaming, entertainment, media, many industries, and it really had a big impact on all of us. Now, Bitcoin, blockchain, smart contracts, artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, and big data are all combining to transform the biggest industries in the world, the ones that were heretofore not really affected that much by the internet. And those are banking, insurance, real estate, government, healthcare. Those are trillion and multi-trillion-dollar industries. And it will be entrepreneurs that transform those. And at Draper Associates, we bring in incredible deal flow, 20,000 a year opportunities, and choose about 20 of them to invest in. And we feel that we are in such a strong position, but we have a huge responsibility because the success of our companies will determine the wealth of the world, who gets employed, how many people we can re-employ in this new world, how well we do for our limited partners, all of those things. So I feel a great burden, and I'm invigorated by it. I feel like this is one of the most exciting and most dynamic, but also the most impactful times that we will ever have in the history of the world. So with that, I'll open it up for some questions.
Great, thank you, Tim. We have a ton of questions coming in. We'll start on one of the first points that you touched upon, which is wallet growth and adoption. There are several questions around this. I've just selected one of them. The potential being promised hasn't changed for the last 2 years. The title of the talk is adoption. What needs to happen for moving from this theoretical utopian promises into actual mass adoption? And actually, I'll add a personal question to that as well. You're a shareholder in several of the major exchanges. We've seen a lot of hiring happening at those exchanges recently. What are they seeing, and what are you seeing that the rest of us aren't in terms of adoption on the horizon?
Yeah, the mass adoption is just beginning. When there's a bull market, everybody thinks everything's fine. Why do I have to change? Why do I have to try something new? And then a shock happens, and in this case, governments are printing money and making that money less and less valuable. And people are recognizing that, so they're looking at it, at Bitcoin, as just a safe haven. But the other thing that's happening is, all the way along here, the early adopters and the engineers and the entrepreneurs have been building an ecosystem around Bitcoin. At some point, that ecosystem, already for me, but at some point that ecosystem is going to be easier to use for people on how to hold their value, how to hold their money. And that will take companies like OpenNode that make it so that the retailer can accept Bitcoin and not slow down the blockchain and the transactions on the blockchain. It's going to require the accounting to be built around the blockchain so that people can keep perfect records. The tax people can come and figure out how they're going to tax. All those things have to be pretty solid. And all that is coming, and all that is starting to happen right about now. And that's why I predicted $250,000 per Bitcoin in 2022. or the beginning of 2023, because I think it will be about that time that all this engineering will come to fruition and have a little bit of time for people to adopt new ways of trade, of moving money around. And so that's the beginning of something quite extraordinary. And the hiring is just a result that they are growing. Bitcoin is growing, Coinbase is growing, OpenNode is growing. The number of wallets around the world is growing. People are finally saying, wait, you know, I should have done this. You know, I don't believe I waited this long, but finally I'm stuck in place. I might as well do it. And that's starting to steamroll, and people are realizing that as soon as you put some Bitcoin on a ledger, you're going to be looking and going, whoa, this is my new bank. And that there is a powerful feeling there. All of a sudden you go, wow, this is really exciting. And I don't need these bankers who I'm not sure I completely trust. This is solid. It's right here, and I can spend it, I can invest it, I can do a number of different things. Now there are systems for you can borrow and lend Bitcoin. You can invest Bitcoin, but a lot of the governments haven't caught up to that idea. They aren't accepting Bitcoin yet as tax revenue, and I think they should, because it is going to be a much more effective and efficient way to do business. So I think that's going to happen.
Thank you, Tim. So question from Darren Harchandani. So far, the most evident use of Bitcoin has been speculation. And you touched upon your outlook and prediction for price and price, the price of Bitcoin going up to 250,000 plus. But do you see volatility settling down in Bitcoin, and wouldn't that be necessary for mass adoption beyond speculation?
Yeah, two things really are not right there. One is speculation. No, Bitcoin is being used for transactions throughout Africa, throughout Argentina, wherever people don't trust their currency 100%. It is being used for remittance, for sending money across border. It's being used for a whole bunch of different things. So there is a real use of this currency. It is not, speculation is the way maybe an investor would look at Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is not an investment. It is a new way of operating. It's just going to continue to rise against fiat currencies, against dollars and whatever else, drachma, pesos, naira. And what you're seeing as volatility, I look at very differently. One Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. But over time, what you're seeing is real volatility in fiat currencies as they slowly disappear from sight, as Bitcoin becomes stronger and stronger in relation to these political currencies, and so it's not volatile at all. In fact, it's incredibly stable. You know, there are only 21 million of them. You know, no individual will have the ability to sweep through and print 2 trillion of them. You know that those things are, that this is a very permanent thing. So you are, when you talk about volatility, it's the volatility of a mentality of people who are watching as slowly but surely they see these fiat currencies disappearing from the map because they're not as good. Fiat currency can't be tracked as well. Fiat currency is not global. It's usually tied to one country or another. Fiat currency can't be moved as easily across borders. It has to be translated. You have to lose 8% if you go through Western Union. Fiat currency is not a good way to pay employees that are remote. It just isn't as good. And fiat currency is subject to the political whims of the people in local power, tribal power. So I think we've got a new world, and we have a better currency.
What about central banks and big commercial banks adopting this technology, pushing CBDC or central bank digital currencies and other potential stable coins in order to extrapolate the efficiency of Bitcoin with something that's directly linked to fiat?
Yeah, some of these stable coins, Maker is making great progress. Some of the stable coins make some sense as a bridge to this sort of Bitcoin world, and they will kind of move along. But if a government creates a stable coin, all they're doing is digitizing the fiat currency. So all those things that I said are great about Bitcoin and were not great about fiat are still there. Digital currency may be a little easier to move around, but that's not the point. The point is, if there's stablecoin tied to a country, you're still stuck in that country with that money. So I don't think they will be successful. I don't think people will want to embrace them. And they didn't. I think Iceland started with the Aurora coin way back when, and the whole population said, "Why do I want this? I don't get it." We're still stuck with only spending it in Iceland. What's the point? And so I think that you've got a new world. The geographic borders of the world become less relevant. Tribalism slowly goes away. We all become global, and we will want global currencies. We will want currencies that are open, transparent, global. We'll want good identity. We'll want to make sure identity is strong, because then you don't need as much security and you're not as concerned about hackers. And that's the world I think we're headed for, and that's certainly the world business environment is looking forward to.
So a question from Kevin. He agrees with much of what we're saying, but as it pertains to globalization, don't you think the virus has put much of this on the back burner? And this is something where you've been quite against the grain, Tim. A lot of people are saying this is the end of globalization. This is going to result in a massive balkanization. But you've been actually saying the opposite, that COVID is driving a new form of globalization. Could you unpackage that for us?
Yeah, it sort of depends on whether you're driven by fear or by opportunity. If you're driven by fear, you spend a lot of your time watching the news, and you give away a part of your brain to the news, and you and that's your world. And that world, I mean, let's get it straight. The media sells fear, fear sells advertising. You are in a fearful world. That fearful world, if a virus comes along, you're looking to leadership. You're looking to people who think for themselves to determine where you should go. Well, that leadership has spoken. A lot of them have said, okay, we got to stay in place. Now they're going to open back up, and people are looking to their individual tribal leader. That's okay, but it's the history. It's the way we used to operate. But long term, we're going to be looking to be a one world. So during this fear time, the whole thing contracted. Those people, those fearful people, were looking to leaders to sort of guide them. What should we do? There's a virus. There's an external threat. What do we do? and they followed the one they were the most comfortable with, which was the one that happened to be in their geographic territory. And so that kind of bred a little bit of nationalism. You know, they blame the Chinese, or they blame, oh, it happened too quickly in Europe, or, oh, this Sweden experiment, it was a success, but pay no attention to this success over here. That kind of thing is very much tied to tribalism. The people who are sort of looking and saying, well, what's really going on here, are saying this is an interesting time. It is moving history much quicker, and sure, I think there are two worlds. There's a dystopian world in which we are all locked down. We're in effect in jail. We have no freedoms. We do whatever our government tells us to do, and we're stuck. And the government gets more and more fascist and abrasive. And, it's interesting, in the Middle East, people are finally starting to remove their masks. And now the Middle Eastern people who are women who are in the US are telling me, I finally got to remove my mask, and now they're telling me to put one back on. I think there are enough people that think for themselves and say, no, it's a global world. We do like the security and whatever it is that you provide local government, but we also realize that we can get our healthcare insurance cheaper, better, faster from another country. We can get our other types of insurance, Social Security, pensions, whatever, cheaper, better, faster from this other country. If you, maybe you provide better surveillance, maybe you provide something else that I like, and so I'll stay in this country rather than moving to this country. So I believe that these countries are now, and right now they have our ear, and we listen to them, and we do whatever they tell us to do. Well, once the COVID is lifted, we're going to go back and say, well, wait, no, we're really global, and you guys, governments, I know you've been telling us what to do, and I know we've been working for you, but now you need to work for us, and you need to compete for us. You need to provide better service for the taxes you charge than this other country, or I will move to that country. And now we can operate completely virtually. So a lot of countries are looking at this as an opportunity to say, hey, look, we're free, we're brave. This is we're willing to take the risk, and we're an exciting place to go. Well, that will be the place that entrepreneurs flee to. I look in the crypto world, Binance had to jump from country to country to country as countries would make it illegal, and then he'd go to another country. I know China made Bitcoin illegal, and Binance then moved to Singapore. Singapore started to get heavy-handed with their regulations, and he moved to Malta. Okay, the same kind of thing might happen here. People might say, well, our government was a little aggressive on this, like wear a mask 6 feet away, whatever. Sweden completely opened up. Maybe I'll move to Sweden. So governments now are going to have to realize that they are in competition for the people of the world, but also the businesses of the world, the money of the world, the entrepreneurs of the world, the future of the world. And they are going to have to provide good service the way all businesses provide good service. Stronger and stronger healthcare, better education, better whatever. or people will, some people will just stay no matter what. But some people will move, and those people who move might take a lot of value with them. So I would say the governments that are getting draconian right now should make sure that they only were draconian for the virus and not draconian period, because if they don't lighten up, people are going to move.
So we touched quite a bit on regulation. Do you think that there's been enough progress on regulation in this space? This is actually a question from one of our attendees, also mentioning that institutional investors consider sound regulation a prerequisite before getting involved, and the space could definitely use the benefit of their dry powder. What are you seeing with regulators, and what regulators have been ahead? You mentioned that some countries may be able to attract entrepreneurs. As you know, Dubai, Abu Dhabi have been at the leading edge of the curve recently in crypto regulation. So what's your perspective and outlook on regulation, and what do you think how that landscape is going to change?
Actually, I think the regulators got involved too quickly, because it didn't allow for the whole economic system to be built before they started around Bitcoin, before they started to regulate cryptocurrencies. I'm sure, though, that there were a lot of people that were sort of bamboozled by the cryptocurrency craze in 2017, and they lost some money there if they weren't really digging in and paying attention. But on the other hand, using an 80-year-old law to determine how to regulate these new currencies that are popping up everywhere, I think is not forward-thinking enough, and stopped a lot of really interesting technological innovation that should have progressed. Things like airdrops. Airdrops were suddenly illegal in the United States because of the 40 Act. Airdrops are an amazing new technology that can really transform things like aid. Imagine, well, the U.S. gives away billions and billions of dollars in aid, and they usually give it to the African dictator, who then says, well, okay, half of it goes to me, a quarter of it goes to my buddies, and a quarter of it we'll build the nuclear power plant with. With an airdrop, you can spread that money throughout the entire place and build a whole economy in the country around some cryptocurrency, and do it in a way that that has that country just launch into the 22nd century. I think by over-regulating too soon and getting too heavy-handed too soon, regulators have stopped innovation, have halted innovation. So the innovation had to sort of pop up in other places other than the places it was being invented in, and that's not healthy. That's not good for the places that have all the innovation happening, like Silicon Valley, different parts of China, different parts of India. They are harmed if the regulators stop that technology too quickly in its tracks. And they've all those regulators have had to try to walk this fine line, trying to figure out, well, I don't want to lose technology, but I want to slap down these frauds. That's a very difficult battle to pursue if you don't have like a fixed set of laws in place. But the laws should have looked at these as currencies from the word go, where the taxes could be taken in those currencies, not just in the fiat that's tied to that government. And I think long term we'll get there, but I think all the heavy regulation has slowed that and hurt that. So I would say it's a mixed bag, and I don't envy the regulators, because I look and I say, boy, that is a tough job to figure out how to regulate something where you don't even know where the technology is taking you in the future. You're always trying to play catch up, and you're always trying to tie it to regulations from the deep, distant past, as opposed to sort of saying, okay, new game, how do we manage this?
So a lot of the institutional investment in this space has actually been channeled from our side and from what we've seen through crypto mining, which has been an incredibly important part of the industry and ecosystem. As mentioned, Crypto Vault, leading crypto miner in Norway, is actually the sponsor of the session and is going to be doing another session on the institutionalization of crypto mining and creating a new asset class. What's been your view of the importance of crypto miners, their role, and their outlook, again, with energy prices now coming to incredibly low levels, and it being one of the more institutional and sophisticated segments for playing into this market?
Well, mining should get pretty profitable because energy is so cheap now, and so that, at least for I know mining is very much a cyclical business, and a very valuable one. It's a big part of what makes Bitcoin valuable. Companies like Tezos don't require as much energy to do that kind of work, but still, the vast majority of cryptocurrencies are mined in that way, and it does require energy. But I actually expect with the halvening that in the short term it may be a little bit difficult for miners, but 6 months out or a year out, I suspect energy will still be relatively cheap, and the price of Bitcoin will be much higher, and they will be in a very strong position. So I think there may be a little bit of difficulty because right after the halvening, they only get half as many Bitcoin for all the same effort. But that usually spikes a price increase. And after that price increase, knowing that the energy is cheap, the margin should expand. So yeah, miners are a big part of this world. I also like the fact that it's not people said, oh yeah, Bitmain, they're going to take over the world and we're all going to be stuck. That that probably won't happen, because Antminer or whoever will be coming up with better and better technologies. Every year, every 2 years, there will be a new, faster, cheaper way to mine, and eventually it'll be quantum computing, and then something beyond that. So I actually think that there will always be room for miners. There will always be room for the smaller miner, and and there will be always an opportunity for miners to jump in with when the technology hits a new where there's a new level, the technology jumps to a new level. As soon as the technology jumps to a new level, there's an opportunity for miners to jump in there and capture some real value.
So we share the same view, and generally what we've seen is after a halvening, the brunt of the impact is borne by the smaller miners, But what ends up happening is the price recovers and the large miners end up gaining significant market share, those that have very, very low cost of operation. And then on top of that, benefiting from the recovery or surge in price as a result of the halvening. But you said you still think there will be room for the smaller miner in the future, and that's being driven by innovation. Do you mind unpackaging that a little bit more?
Yeah, Moore's law says that $1,000 worth of compute power doubles every 18 months. So if you're doubling every 18 months, that means 18 months from now, you're going to have an Antminer, a mining machine that is twice as powerful, and every 36 months, it'll be 4 times as powerful as the one that is in place in Bitmain today. Well, if you're a small miner, there is going to be an opportunity every time there's that new leap for you to go buy that most recent machine, get it working quickly, and capture more of the Bitcoin before it commoditizes, where some large company starts to take a bigger and bigger share of it. And Bitmain is still operating with a bunch of very slow, will be still operating with a bunch of slow machines, unless they are also buyers of these new machines. And so they have to keep staying ahead. And so this ends up being an ongoing free market. And I think the small miner still can have an edge. At least at the very beginning when there's a new machine in place. And as I remember, about 3 months ago, they did launch a new machine that that's much faster and better than the one before.
So Tim, you touched upon Tezos briefly, and you and I have both been very interested in Tezos, and you were one of the early investors. We've done digital securities on Tezos's platform and find it to be an excellent organization to work with. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about these second, third generation blockchains and staking, those cryptos that work without the traditional proof of work mining.
Yeah, they're called proof of stake, and they've got a different way to have people watch over the blockchain. And the way they do it is they have this staking, and people get rewards for that staking. And the other real benefit of specifically of Tezos is I just got a poll came up on my screen that's about me. Yeah, he's doing a great job. Oh, and it says, are you interested in connecting with Draper's team? I am Tim at draper.vc. So if you need to reach me, if you're an investor looking to invest, if you're a startup and you've got a business plan, please go ahead and connect with me. If you don't send me your spam. But Tim at draper.vc. Anyway, the real value of Tezos is that it is specifically built for smart contracts, and that most of the engineering effort, most of the strength of the token is going to be built into creating smart contracts, and that is going to be very valuable long term, because I believe that pretty much every contract that deals with money is going to be built as a smart contract rather than a written in multiple languages and tried to be interpreted and whatever. If it's built into a smart contract, we know where the money goes and when and what events trigger that movement of money, and and so that whole waterfall can be put together very well. And Tezos is, I believe, I believe that they're I don't know whether they've passed Ethereum, but they are the furthest. I believe they're the furthest along now as a cryptocurrency for smart contracts. I know there's a lot of legacy that Ethereum has, but those were not. It wasn't solid. It wasn't as solid of engineering as the Tezos engineering is. So yeah, I believe that that's where a lot of this will go. And it's different. It doesn't require as much energy to operate the system, and it's a very innovative way for a token to be created.
So one of the ways that we've been implementing platforms like Tezos has been in digital securities and tokenizing real estate. And you touched upon real estate being one of the industries that can be disrupted by this technology. How can you take something physical like real estate and disrupt it with something like that is completely digital like crypto?
So a couple of different things are happening already. One is a few companies are Proppy for one are doing title, and there are in the U.S. title is usually in a back file somewhere, and they have title insurance, and it's a big industry just ensuring that you own what you think you own. If that's all digitized, everybody's going to know exactly where those borders are, what property you actually own, where the fence lines are, everything. In some countries in Africa, Tanzania, for instance, they're not really familiar with title. Title is sort of, it's a very much more amorphous, and I believe that they can leapfrog the United States, because if they put their title on the blockchain, suddenly they are going to be much more easily, it's going to be easier for them to trade real estate. The other thing that's happening is the tokenization of real estate, both through the owners and the renters and whoever else. Real estate can be divided up. Say you're building a skyscraper and nobody has enough money to put that skyscraper in place, except some of these sovereign wealth people. Instead, what they do is they chop up the ownership, and that ownership can be chopped up into many, many, many pieces and tokenized, and then those tokens can be traded as ownership in that property. And then whatever revenue that property in Bitcoin can give off, it can then be spread around to whoever the owners are. So I think we've got a real change coming in real estate. I know that some companies like Redfin have challenged the brokerage system. I think that this will actually challenge the limitations on who can own real estate, and it will certainly challenge the title insurance business. So great things happening in real estate. It'll be a much more efficient place, and the little investor will have an opportunity to participate.
Well, an hour has flown by. This has been such an interesting discussion and dialogue, and I really want to thank you so much. I'm going to have one final question. Again, thanking Crypto Vault and Raha and the team. Anyone who's interested in joining to learn more about crypto mining and the institutionalization of crypto mining, how that's creating a new asset class, please make sure to dial in next Tuesday, the 12th of May at 4 p.m. UAE time. Tim, one more question. You've discussed Bitcoin. You're obviously long Bitcoin, Tezos. What does your crypto portfolio look like? What are some of the other coins that you hold as a final thing, and then maybe some closing remarks from your side?
Well, my hot button is the decentralization of the world, but it's also in innovating new forms of government. And so I kind of like Aragon because I am an Aragon holder, because they are innovating the jury trial. So they're creating juries. I also think that could move into tokenized voting. It can move into a lot of different areas, and that's pretty exciting. I own Tezos. I own let's see, a little Maker, a little Ethereum, Bitcoin, more Bitcoin. I keep buying more Bitcoin. I just think that that's going to be the currency of the future. It's going to be, and people say, well, are you going to sell it? And I say, well, you don't understand. This is a currency. You don't sell it. You might invest it. You might spend it, but you're not investing in Bitcoin. What you're doing is buying Bitcoin as a future currency that everyone will soon use, and you will, and it will probably be a currency that rises while the fiat currencies fall, and that's over a long period of time. Your fiat currency isn't going away tomorrow. It's just over time. Fiat currencies will be more and more volatile, and then they'll drift away to where people start laughing at you when you try to buy coffee with dollars. And that'll be 3 or 4 years from now, something like that. Yeah, so I really appreciate the time. Zach, you always put on a great event. You're one of the great innovators, one of the great connectors of the world. We really love the connection, and please keep in touch. And Raha and Florence, thanks for your help too. I hope this went over well. I hope this is what you had expected. People never quite get what they expect when I speak, because I don't even know what's coming out of my mouth. So I appreciate you continuing to bring me on as a speaker. So thank you all, and thanks for whoever's still listening.
Thank you so much, Tim, and it was really a pleasure. Just one more closing note that I have was something that was told to me by a prominent FX trader, and he said currencies do not float, they sink at competing rates. Thank you, Tim.